Welcome back to The Evil Within. This is our You Asked For It achievement run, therefore it's a new game on Akumu difficulty. You can see that we're starting the final chapter, chapter 15. This initial cutscene is sort of a premonition, or it's hard to tell if it's really happening in real time or not, but it's a scene from the end of the Consequence DLC. At least that's the start of that is. This last part, I think, is the nightmare that Sebastian himself is adding to the dream. Obviously, a nightmare. All right, well, the first part of chapter 15, it's really not that terribly long, or it doesn't feel that long of a chapter, but there's a lot of intro into the final sequences that then go very, very fast. So I've broken it into two episodes. One episode to cover kind of the introduction time, where there's not a lot of action. There's the last of the few artifacts to pick up for the Every Nook and Cranny achievement.
Nobody here at all?
You can't complete the Every Nook and Cranny achievement in a single New Game run. You must play some of it in New Game Plus.
Short brown hair, brown eyes, responds to nickname.
That missing poster is reportedly Kidman. Responds to the nickname Star Star Star, a hint for Kid. She's often called Kid by her coworkers as well as Mobius.
Internal Affairs interview transcript, March 13th, 2013. Investigator 5. You know why you're here? Detective Castellanos. Because you people aren't doing your job? 5. You've been pursuing an unauthorized investigation and using KCPD resources to do so. In addition, there are reports of threats, intimidation, and physical violence. Castellanos. If you had any proof of those allegations, you'd be taking my badge and gun right now. 5. You've obviously been careful, otherwise we would have. But we're watching you. Castellanos. You're not the only ones. 5. What is that supposed to mean? Castellanos. Keep following me and you'll find out soon enough. 5. You keep drinking like you do, we won't have to. Castellanos. I've got work to do. Are we finished here? 5. For now, but you're on thin ice, Castellanos. If we get even one more report, you're through. Castellanos. I'll be through when it's over. Detective Castellanos leaves the interview room.
The key takeaways there. First, I want to say that this is your last opportunity to get anything that you left in the lockers. After this, you will not have access to the lockers nor the map room. You'll notice that we do not have all of the map pieces, so you cannot see the map completed during a New Game Plus, and you won't be able to complete the Every Nook and Cranny achievement in a single game until you've played at least part of a game in New Game Plus. Okay, that out of the way. A couple of things in that note. You see that basically Sebastian went ahead and tried to continue the investigation that he got in the notes from his wife Myra, that investigation was leading to, he feels, someone else besides the police department watching him. It also led to the police department itself pushing back on him, saying you need to stop. And those are the forces that he thought he might not be able to counter if he continued the investigation. All right, that gets out pretty much everything about those opening scenes. So let's talk back to what I promised in the last episode. I promised that I would tie Ruvik's mental human psyche key of fear, hope, and consent to the 90-10 rule of life.
All right, kid, where are you taking me?
Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% your response to it. From that filter, think of fear as the 10%. Everything that's happening, the world falling apart, the foes, everything Ruvik's throwing at you, that's the 10% that you have no control over. You can't control what other people are going to do. That is causing the fear. Fear is the 10%. Your response to that fear is your 90%. And we've talked about how Sebastian, Leslie, and Ruvik responded to trauma. Trauma, in a very real sense, is some major event that causes an incredible amount of fear or feeling of loss, right? And in the case of Leslie and Ruvik, there was certainly fear involved. And Ruvik's response was hate. That hate leads to a need for vengeance, leads to his maniacal plans to be able to torture anybody with a single look. Leslie's response to fear was to the trauma was to internalize and withdraw internally and build his own walls, his own shelters. The game started off with a contest between the two, Leslie trying to keep his walls secure and Ruvik trying to gain enough power to overcome those walls. All right, so we established that well in the 90-10 philosophy, but now let's shift that to fear and hope. Think about your response to fear being how your hope. So 10% of what's happening in this game is the fear. It looks like 90% on the screen, right? I mean, all you see is fighting with monsters, fighting with foes. That's the 10% that Sebastian has no control over. That's the 10% where he's just thrown here or there, and then some new foe is put in front of him. He has no control over that. What he does have control over is 90%, his response to that. Now, let's see how Leslie has responded in those same situations. Every time he's been put into STEM, he's gone into his sanctuary. He's built those walls. He's built solid walls to protect him. And Ruvik has been... He's not subject to the fear. He's causing the fear, right? But he's been trying to overcome that sanctuary, and he hasn't been able to. Sebastian comes along, and think of the typical response from Leslie. What would it be? Leslie sees in Sebastian a savior. Okay? There are a whole bunch of people that were brought in with when Jimenez turned on the wireless version of STEM. There were hundreds, maybe thousands of people in the city surrounding area of Beacon that were pulled into STEM. And what did we see? We saw it early on in the game in chapter 2 when the beacon light, which is a metaphor, a visual representation of the wireless STEM signal coming across the people. They gave up hope. Their response to that fear of everything going wild around them, that fear, they responded with no hope. They felt that they had no recourse. They felt that they had no way to escape that. That response of no hope equals haunted. Let this audio tape play.
Must have been my home. I was aware of every slice, every severed nerve, every tug of flesh pulled away from my bones until absolute darkness overtook me. Darkness and pain. 1,000 other sensations as they probed my cerebrum, examined my work. An eternity of intensity. Pain. Pleasure. Rage. Ecstasy. Blending together into a single piercing noise. Until the darkness was broken by sparks. Like twinkling starlight. The pain. The noise. The light blends together. Takes shape. It's a place I know so well. My prison. My home.
You see in that tape that he's describing exactly what he did to the Elk River villagers, right? He kept their brain alive and kept their senses aware while he probed and tortured their brain. Mobius did the exact same thing to him, the exact same thing, and he ironically doesn't really even understand how horrible what he did was. He understands how horrible it is when it's done to him, but he never quite gets to the other side of that. It was horrible when I did it. You also see, I think there at the end, he's saying that where his consciousness started inside Stem was his own shelter, the Victoriano mansion. So his prison, his home, that's where his consciousness finally coalesced and pulled itself back together into that internal construct. Similar to the way it happened for Leslie, right? Okay. All right. So we were talking about 10% of life being what happens to you, and in Stem, that's fear. That's manifest clearly as fear throughout the whole game, the things that Sebastian has no control over. When he has no control over them, what he does have control over is the 90% of life, which is his response to that 10%. We talked about how those that the response to fear is hope. If you have no hope, you become haunted. You immediately become overwhelmed. You immediately become a tool of Ruvik.
Newer note from Sewer. Do you still dream of escape? So near at hand? What is the point of dreaming when your body lies here, never moving? R.
If you're Leslie, your response is to withdraw internally, build your own walls, but to look for a savior. That's hope in something external. That's hope in a savior. That's hope that somebody out there will fix this problem for me. That external hope is what it allows him to sit inside of his sanctuary, inside the hospital rooms that we've been going to as the sanctuary, and wait for that savior. He grasps desperately onto Sebastian as that savior at the beginning of the game, right at the end of chapter 1. We covered that in great detail. That external hope is falling apart. When he puts his hope externally, Sebastian's protecting him, except for he's never around. He doesn't understand what's going on. He can't really solve it. He puts his hope in Kidman. Kidman pulls a gun on him and is going to shoot him in the back of the head. These external feelings of hope, this external savior, is not manifesting. He even put some hope in at least Jimenez being able to get him out again, and went to Jimenez, and Jimenez dies. His external hopes are just slowly being crushed. You saw early in this episode that he still has a tiny little bit of hope in Sebastian. He's pulling Sebastian towards Beacon with him. He's saying, come this way, come this way, come this way. They get separated again, thanks to Ruvik probably. And now Sebastian isn't there, but he's about to catch up with him a little bit. At least he's about to hear him again. But that external, that putting all of your hope externally is what makes Leslie the perfect vessel for Ruben. You heard the note from Ruben/Ruvik there saying what hope is there for escape when your body is lying here confined. His body is literally confined in a jar. His consciousness is in a jar, in a brain in a jar, right? He can't leave Stem unless he puts himself into Leslie. If he puts himself into Leslie and Leslie gets out, he can escape. What he needs from Leslie is not to be overcome like the haunted, but to willingly lock himself in a corner of his own mind and let Ruvik slide the key under the door, if you will. So lock himself in a basement in his own mind, slide the key under the door, and let Ruvik have control of him. That's what he needs from Leslie. And that's what he's going to get because Leslie put all of his hope externally. By putting your hope externally, you're giving up consent, the final key. External hope leads directly to consent.
By the time I realized Jimenez had betrayed me, it was too late. I was so close. He knew it. Knew that I was too focused to notice when he brought those men. They'd never gotten past my traps otherwise. Their device is a perversion of my own. The device I should have created. My data, my equipment, my theories, my mind. They replaced my husk of a body with a new dimension of torment.
And you see that that's an indication that he was never in alignment with Mobius on how they were wanting to use the device versus how he wanted to use the device. It's not real clear exactly how he wanted to use the device. It's pretty clear that Mobius wants to rule the world by subconsciously controlling people. Okay, so we've established that 10% of what is happening is the fear that's being generated, the events that are terrifying. That's the 10% you have very little control over. You have 90% is the response to that. That no hope means you immediately become overcome. You have no resistance to it, and you become haunted, or one of Ruvik's other constructs. Placing your hope external in a savior, even a strong savior like Sebastian, who's doing his damnedest to beat Ruvik, right? Even that kind of external hope leads to consent. If nothing else, you're consenting to be governed by the person that will save you, the person that will make the fear end, that will take the pain away. You're consenting to that savior to save you. That external placement leads directly to consent. That is Ruvik's key. That's his trifecta key. Make you afraid, give you some hope, and you will consent. That unlocks your psyche. That gives him control. The person that can control the 10%, and you placing your faith that they can make the 10% go away, is what makes you consent to them governing you. Think about the third response while we do this review of our item collections. You'll notice that I'll point out something. This was when we first got here. This was the first time that Brian realized he forgot a map in Chapter 5. If you were watching the episodes when we were covering through Chapter 5, I drew a big red circle around the map as I walked right by it, right? So I know where it is, but honestly, this was the first time I realized that I had missed it. It turns out to be a good thing, because tomorrow's episode, or at least the next episode, not the next episode. The next episode will complete Chapter 15, which will be all battles and all strategic talk. But after that, we're going to do what I'm going to call a victory lap, meaning we're going to take the brass knuckles that we get by completing the game on Akumu, and we're going to destroy Survivor Mode Chapter 5 and go get that map. We'll also get the one piece of information that you cannot get in a new game, and that is the missing person poster number 15. It's not available. It never appears in a new game. You have to get it in New Game Plus. If you got it in a new game, it would be too much of a giveaway. So it's not presented in a new game. So after we complete Chapter 15, we will do a victory lap where we will use the brass knuckles that we get from finishing the game on Akumu and literally destroy a survival run of Chapter 5, one of the harder runs, one of the harder chapters. We will pick up that map. We will also get the missing person poster number 2, complete the every nook and cranny achievement. And by doing that, we'll show you the map completed in the map room, as well as the briefcase of toys, which you get 2 more weapons, a burst handgun and an upgraded sniper rifle. So stay tuned for that. There'll be some other good information in that. We'll briefly summarize in one episode, from start to finish, the whole philosophical view of the game. And we will also show you how the New Game Plus system works. There you see the last missing piece there. I believe I also show you the key items in here. The key items are things that you can't miss. You literally can't progress past checkpoints in the game if you don't collect them. So they're not part of the every nook and cranny achievement, but at the same time, you can't miss them. But I thought it would be fun to show you what they were. All right, so maybe you've had time to think about what Sebastian's response to fear was. Sebastian has hope. Clearly, he's fighting what's going on. He has hope that he can overcome it. But notice the phrasing there. He's not hoping for a savior to come get him. He's relying on himself. Self-reliance. It's as simple as that. Sebastian doesn't look external for his hope. He has hope. He places it in himself. Whether he can win or not, he doesn't know, but he hopes he can. He thinks he will do his best to overcome the situation. He's a police officer. He's going to bring Ruvik to justice. That's his job. He's good at it, and he knows it. He puts his faith in himself. And you'll see by the end of this exactly what that means. In the end, Sebastian is as strong as Ruvik. He's not even the central processing unit of the stem, but he's as strong as Ruvik. Simply because he brings his strength with him. He doesn't hide from it. He doesn't escape from it. He doesn't try to project it unnecessarily on other people, but he carries it with him everywhere he goes. That is as clear a statement of individual responsibility. He took responsibility for the trauma that happened to him. He took responsibility for his actions. He took responsibility for his response to the world. By internalizing that response, he then gains control over the 90%. He takes responsibility for how he reacts in each situation. He looks to himself to respond in a manner that's true to himself. That self-resilience, that self-reliance, individual responsibility, that leads to freedom. The only way to be free, to truly be free as an individual, is to take responsibility for the 90%, which is your response to the 10% of the world feeds you. You can't control everything in life, but you can control how you respond to it. Taking ownership of that and understanding that you're taking ownership of that leads you to feel truly free. All right. There's my philosophy of life, and you should take that with you into the real world. Take responsibility for your responses. Don't let the 10% control you. Don't look externally for responses to the 10%. Looking externally will lead to consent, which will lead to you being governed. Lead you to the mercy, leave you at the mercy of who you give that consent to. The goal here is, I know that there's a huge arena coming up, and I don't want to be reloading at a critical time, so I used whatever resources I had left to increase the number of shotgun shells and the number of handgun shells that those weapons can carry. Not how many I can carry, but how many can be loaded into the weapon physically. In a way, it does increase your inventory overall, because now you've made a hole in your inventory that you could fill. I also know that shock bolts are the #1 crowd killer. They're the way to suppress a crowd easily, and crowds are what's going to be coming here very soon. We're going to have one final cutscene where you will see that those with no hope and no understanding and no real self-reliance are just blown away by Ruvik, but Sebastian stands his ground. One last note from Ivan.
Watch out for his eye. What? If you want to live, you avoid Ruvik's eye. Watch out for his eye.
What's that supposed to mean?
You'll see.
I honestly still dislike that cutscene because of what's coming. It just seems so ludicrous. But what I think it's actually a reference to is in the DLC, the assignment, the very first of the DLCs that we play as Kidman. She puts together a note that says he being Ruvik envisions a time when a look will allow him to infest the person that he looks at. You look with your eyes, so I'm going to go with that's maybe as deep of a meaning as I could get from that. But here are the people with no hope. And here's Sebastian. Notice his neck didn't just pop. It's because he believes in himself strong enough to believe that he has some way to act, some way to react to whatever is thrown at him. The self-reliance comes up with fire. Notice Ruvik just cannot stand this. His own mental fortitude couldn't stand the fire, but what's coming is his response to that, trying to just completely overwhelm it, completely destroy Sebastian. Well, that's the first half of chapter 15. Tomorrow's episode, the last of the Akumu version of the runs, will finish off the game. It's going to be almost wall-to-wall action. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you enjoyed that one. Thanks for watching.